Okay, we'll get started. My name is Greg Peterson. As chair of the Jamestown Bar Association Memorial Committee, I would like to call a special meeting of the Jamestown Bar Association Memorial Committee to celebrate the life of Robert Schnizler. The order of the day is I will be sharing a little bit of his obituary. Then we will be having anybody here who would like to share from the Jackson Center a comment or two. And then we'll open it up to the number of folks who are joining us via Zoom to share. All of this is being recorded with an eye towards sharing this with his family members. With that, I'll commence the vignettes of the obituary. Robert Winan Schnizler, age 64, of Lakewood, New York, died on November 24th, 2020. He was born November 7th, 1956, in New Rochelle, New York, the son of Charles John Schnizler and Isabel Risso Schnizler. Robert grew to adulthood in Jamestown, New York. He was a 1974 graduate of Jamestown High School. He was awarded a BA from Mercer University, Macon, Georgia. He earned a Master of Science degree from Newhouse School of Communications at Syracuse University, and he worked for a radio station in Macon, Georgia, where he met many famous figures. He traveled during his college years visiting England and the island of Guam, where his stepfather was serving as a captain in the United States Navy. Bob earned a Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Buffalo College of Law and was admitted to practice in New York State in 1988. He was a knowledgeable and dedicated attorney and was actively handling cases in Chautauqua County Family Court, Surrogates Court, and New York State Supreme Court at the time of his death. In 2014, he was awarded the Honorable Michael Dillon Attorney for the Children Award for the 8th Judicial District for outstanding legal advocacy for children. Former chair of the Town of Bustide Democratic Committee, past president of the Jamestown Bar Association, past president of the Chautauqua Humane Society Board of Directors, member of the Zion Covenant Church, Lakewood Rod and Gun Club. He served on the Chautauqua County Humane Society Board of Directors for 8 years and considered his greatest achievement to be his leadership during the construction of the Strunk Road Pet Adoption Center. He was committed to the rights of abused animals throughout his life, with a particular focus on the treatment of cats. He was a generous man who often provided assistance to persons or animals in need. He was a quiet but keen observer of politics and the human condition, and those who knew him well enjoyed his sharp wit. He admired the work of architect Frank Lloyd Wright and traveled to several historic Wright structures in New York and Pennsylvania. He is survived by his mother, Isabel Wright of Jamestown, New York, sister Carolyn Schnizler Wilt of Reading, Pennsylvania, and several nieces and nephews. And a memorial service will be held in the spring of 2021 and will be announced by the Lind Funeral Home. With that, I would like to offer up to the audience that's here at the Robert Jackson Center an opportunity for anyone who would like to come forward. Please announce who you are. We are filming this. And then after that, we will then go to our Zoom audience. At this point, would anybody like to share a reflection? Thank you, Bev.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Beverly Ungerer, and I've been an attorney in family court for my entire career. I have the privilege of working with Bob both as a private attorney and as a court attorney. And I want to say that Bob was a man who brought honor to our profession because, in my experience, he was never unprepared. As a court attorney, I appreciated that greatly. As a practicing attorney, I can count on Bob as someone who always got back to me and knew that he did his homework. I want to share one case that I know Judge Clare is well aware of, Judge Sullivan, and I've probably shared before with other people, but during the time I was working with Judge Clare in family court, we had a case involving a little boy who was maybe 6 years old when it first started, and Bob was assigned as his attorney for the child. He was in an institution, a hospitalized institution, almost his entire life, mostly because his parents would not rise up and do what they had to do to learn how to take care of him at home. The department, for various reasons, and I'm not saying anything about that, but did not prosecute these parents. And so somehow it came to the court's attention, or it came in on some issue, and Bob actively advocated for that little boy. He ended up taking on the Department of Social Services. He prosecuted the neglect. The parents were found to be neglected. In the course of his work for this little boy, he identified a caretaker for this child, someone who had been involved in his care at the facility that he was at. That person ended up filing for a custody petition, and Bob also pushed that along, and ultimately this little boy got out, was placed in a loving home, had the most normal year or two of his life before, unfortunately, he died. But I think that that's just, he changed the life of that little boy and gave him, the joy in the last few years of life that would never have been possible. And I've seen Bob do this on countless occasions. I think he had an extraordinary empathy that probably some of us never really recognized because of his quiet demeanor. And, perhaps it's that empathy that ultimately, led him to places during these times that were very difficult. He represented children in an extraordinary fashion. He would often come to a pretrial and say, I've been to this foster home and I think it's too crowded and we've got to do something about that. So in his very, very quiet way, he could be extremely challenging, and it made him just a wonderful advocate for children. And I certainly will miss seeing Bob's face, working with him. The last time I saw him was in his office, probably about 6 weeks before his death. He was signing some papers that he was AFC. I was representing the mom on a surrender. And we had a chance to talk, and I know these times were very hard on him, but I'd like to say that, in my opinion, he left a strong impact on our community, on our children in this community, and, I was honored to be part of the world that he worked in. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Are there others who would like to share a thought or two? Your Honor?
Hi, I'm Steve Cass, one of the county judges, and I see there's other judges there as well that are attending virtually. Anyways, I always considered, and we have Fred here as well, and I always considered Bob to be one of my contemporaries because we started to really kind of practice law about the same time. He and Ken Lasker were always together, and what a great lawyer he was. And I remember when he was at Burgett and Robbins, and we had many cases together and against each other. And later on, since I guess I've been now on the bench for 23 years, he always appeared in mostly family court cases and guardian ad litem cases. So my interaction with Bob is on a personal level, that we knew each other, on a professional level as attorneys together, and then in the courtroom. I always found Bob to be extremely well prepared. I found him to be kind, courteous, and very professional. I love the fact that he had always got his work done. He was ready to go. He was the kind of person that you could always count on when you needed somebody to represent a child who was in a difficult situation. So many times Bob was able to get the two parties together and cut to the bottom, and many times he would have a resolution figured out when the attorneys came to sit down and negotiate different things. And it was because Bob had that innate sense to protect the child, care for the child, and respect the party's rights. And it's the same way he was with his animals at the SPCA, and he just loved those cats and dogs, and remember the cases that we had with the SPCA, and Bob was so proud of that as well. But I too will miss him very much, his kindness, his professional demeanor, his great dry wit, sense of humor, and just he was an excellent attorney. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Anybody else from the audience here at the Jackson Center who would like to share a thought? If not, I'm going to turn over my left shoulder to the Zoom crowd, and I know Judge Clare reached out and wanted to say something, so I will call on Judge Clare.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, yes.
Okay, good. All right. I first met Bob when he began working as an attorney. I didn't know him before then. Over the years, I had so many cases with him as an attorney myself, and then after I became a judge, he appeared before me more times than I could possibly count, both as a county attorney and also as a private practitioner. Bob and I continued to have a great deal of contact over time, and in the early years, we didn't always get along, but we learned over time not only to work out such things, but we came to respect one another, I believe, greatly. Bob was unique. He was a very private person and definitely had a certain approach to things. And I believe that this was an absolute source of strength when it came to serving on the Attorneys for Children panel. He continually served on this panel and volunteered his services the entire time I was on the bench, and I believe he continued to do so until his death. I always could rely on Bob to fight for a child's interest and to take unpopular stances when necessary. He did a superlative job in some extremely challenging cases that made the difference in a child's life. You just heard about one example from Bev Ungerer, and I absolutely agree with her as to how she assessed that case. He was the source for good in each of these children's lives. I nominated Bob for the Honorable Michael Dillon Attorneys for Children Award for outstanding legal work for children, and he won. There are only 2 attorneys from the entire judicial district who are chosen for this award, and I know it meant a lot to him. It was a small measure of recognition for the time and devotion and fierce advocacy he provided to his children clients. I also believe that in at least one of his cases, his efforts saved the child's life. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Clare. I'm looking also to the,
Chance to speak if I could, Greg.
yes, Judge Piazza.
All right, good morning, everyone. I want to echo the sentiments that we've all heard today. I practiced for over 20 years with Bob in family court, and I had the privilege of having him appear before me, if not daily, at least several times a week. And his quiet, calm demeanor, it was very, very helpful because he was prepared. He knew what was going on, and no one was going to intimidate him or pull anything over on him. But his calm, quiet demeanor would often help facilitate resolution, and he had a wonderful way of dealing with both his clients and the other attorneys in the bar. it's still hard to come to terms with. I can remember just one of the last times he was before me, and he had a very good sense of humor. Even though he was quiet, he had a sense of humor, and I was fortunate enough to share in some of that. And in the days of these virtual appearances, I have to advise everyone not to record the proceedings, that there's an official record being made, etc. And it might have been the last time he appeared before me, and there were only the attorneys present. And instead of going through the whole formal, what I would recite formally, I looked at him. I said, "Now, Mr. Schnizler, don't you record me." He got a big smile on his face. He said, "I promise you I won't." And we laughed about that. And it might have been the last time he appeared before me. And I think about that to this day. But I want to say that there's now a void. There's a void in this court. There's a void in our legal community. And I think we're only beginning to see how much of a void he's left. And he will be missed. I know he will be missed by me, and I know he'll be missed by our legal community. And he helped numerous children throughout the years. And we could all tell a story today about a child or some children that he helped, and we still we wouldn't be able to cover them all. And he's made a big difference on the lives of a lot of children, and he will certainly be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Other folks who might be interested in saying something about that? Just raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Ken Lasker?
Unmute myself. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we're fine. Thanks.
I'm not sure I'll be able to get through this, but there are a few things I want to say. I met Bob in 1988. We started working together at Bergen and Robbins, and like a lot of you said, he was always very quiet. But he was single. I was married. My wife was pregnant, and we didn't know a lot of people, so we started inviting Bob over. My wife is a Midwestern gal, still is, and she liked to cook big dinners on Sunday. She used to call them Sunday dinners, and we'd have a big meal on Sunday at about 12, 1 o'clock. And we'd invite Bob over a lot in the early days. He got to know my parents, my in-laws. He was there when all my kids were brought home from the hospital. Bob was a family friend for a long, long time, and we did a lot together. I had another friend that used to say that Bob had a very small comfort zone. If you got to know him, you were lucky because he was so shy. But if you did get to know him, he was funny as can be, dry sense of humor, always a good time. I remember there were different people in the bar that would say, you guys seem so different. I don't know how you guys are friends, but when we were together, he was a totally different person. He was just very open, very funny, very dry, and a lot of fun. I mean, we did a lot together. I was telling Julie Hewitt after this all happened, her and I have had a few Bob therapy sessions, and Pam and others. And, we had him over so often. I was thinking of so many different memories. One of the ones I remember is I remember sitting on the couch with him and my dad, and we watched the Super Bowl, the wide right Super Bowl together with my kids running around. I think at that point I had 2 little baby boys, and they were running around the house. And I remember they went to a commercial before the kick, and my dad was a Giants fan, and I had been raised a Giants fan, but I moved to Western New York. I was rooting for the Bills. And Bob said to me during the commercial, "There's no way he makes this." And I said, "What are you talking about? He can make it. It's a 40-something yard field goal." He goes, "I'm from Western New York. There's no way he makes this." And he had an incredible memory of all these things. I mean, even after I moved a couple of years ago, Bob and I would talk at least once or twice a month. And And he would just had this incredible memory of details that I sure as heck didn't remember about Springsteen concerts we went to together, a lot of Lucille Ball Comedy Festival shows, and he remembered little bits from the different comedians that I would have long forgotten that really cracked us up. You know, there's so many things I could say, but I mean, I remember, and Greg, don't take offense to this because he thought the world of you, but we used to go to these ceremonies together. A lot of times they were 11:30, and then him and I would go to the Cherry Lounge or the Taco Hut and have lunch afterwards. And one of the things that he used to joke about was, and I know you meant it sincerely, but it was maybe the way you phrased it. He used to say that he used to like to tease Greg about the way he would say about the attorney, he loved the law. So after, we would always sit down for lunch after these meetings, and at some point during the lunch, Bob would be eating his meal, and he would just look at me and just say, he loved the law, and try to repeat Greg Peterson the way Greg would say that, and we would both crack up. He just had a great sense of humor. He was a great guy. My kids adore Bob. Professionally, he was always a really good sounding board between him and Mary Hoydu. Pretty much anything I ever wrote in my career, I would have them proofread for me. Later years, I would email stuff to him because he was a great writer. He would rephrase sentences for me and change stuff around because he had a really good way of writing. He was always in family law right from the beginning. He talked me into joining the Law Guardian panel. He scheduled my training in Rochester, drove me up, took a hotel room in the same hotel, and after my training, we went to dinner, and I think we went to a comedy show somewhere in Rochester that night. Sure, he could remember it. He was always there for me when things did not go well. One of my kids were sick or something was going on in my life, my dad passing away. He was there for me. Even in September, I lost my lab, I had for 13 years. I remember I called Bob to talk about it, and in his recall, he rattled through every dog that my wife and I had had for 34 years of marriage. He remembered the names of the dogs. He knew all 8 of them. He told me stories about all these pets, and it just blew my mind, his recall. I couldn't believe it. I think I was the first one who taught him how to FaceTime. We tried to keep in touch that way. He came out to visit me a little over a year ago out here in Reno, and we had an amazing 3-day weekend together. I know he was lonely, and I knew he was sad. I never thought this would happen. And I miss him every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much. Anybody else with hands raised who would like to share a thought? Judge Hartley, and then Julie.
Thank you, Greg. I was on the bench when Bob started practicing and appeared before me many times. And as many have already said, he was always prepared, do his case well, expressed himself well, and really worked hard for advocating for his clients. The terrible irony to me is that on the last time that I know of that he was scheduled to appear in court, it was at a pre-trial that I was on, scheduled to be with him, and he was not there. And at that time, we did not know why, but it was most unusual that Bob was not where he was scheduled to be, not only on time, but well before that time. And as it turned out, that was the day he passed, and he will be greatly missed. particularly by his clients. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Julie Hewitt?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, you know, there's so much to say about Bob. He really was an exemplary attorney, and not just in his family court practice. He did a great deal in guardianships and matrimonial. And as the other judges have said, he was on time, he was prepared, he was a good advocate. Really, we could clone him and make our court system run much better. But I obviously have a lot of personal memories. He was part of my family, as he was Ken's, and very close to my son, as he was to Ken's 3 sons. And, you know, the thing about Bob is he's kind of my hero. He did save lives. I mean, Bev Unger and Judge Clare have alluded to what he did for children in the court system, and in one case saved a life there. His involvement with the Humane Society, which is a no-kill shelter, was absolutely important and core to his being, and he could not abide mistreatment of animals. And I know that he personally is responsible for not only saving children, but many, many animals. And at one point, I am convinced that he saved the life of myself and Pamela Anderson. We had gone to Klein Hans Music Hall to see our friend Jeff Shevlin sing in the chorus there. And when we came back, we were caught in a terrible microburst storm. We were coming down Route 60. It was sheets and sheets of water coming over the car. He was driving my car for me. And you only got a sense of where you were on the road when you saw brief glimpses from bursts of lightning. It rained so hard you couldn't pull over. And there were tornadoes out there, but you couldn't see anything. And I was in the back seat praying, and Pam was in the front seat praying, and he drove all the way, unable to pull over, from Fredonia down through Stockton and to Gary. And we know for a fact that he saved our lives that day. And well, we couldn't save Bob's life for him. I'm just so thankful for all his friends that did so much for him this last fall and leading up to his death. Ken and Pam and some other friends of his who aren't attorneys, all were there, and he loved every one of you. And for those of you that weren't his closest personal friends, he valued your professional contacts with him. He valued joshing around with you and watching you in the attorney lounge. He absolutely loved your company, and he enjoyed being with all of you very, very much. You meant a lot to him. And I'm very proud of what he accomplished in his life and the kind of man he was. And I know that his sister and his mother and his niece and nephew will very much appreciate everything everyone here has said today. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Anybody else, again, by waving a hand so I can recognize you, who'd like to say something? Yes, Steve.
Yes, you can hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. I have a letter that I received from my brother regarding Bob, and I'm going to first read that letter into the record. Dear Steve, I'm writing to you about my law school roommate, Bob Schnizler. I would ask that you read this letter as part of your remarks at the Jamestown Bar Association Memorial Service for Bob on Friday, January 8th, 2021. Bob was a 1987 graduate of the State University of New York School of Law at Buffalo, or as we often called it, UB Law. As you will recall, I moved in with Bob in August of 1985, just before the beginning of our second year of law school. You, and he's referring to me, had just moved out after spending the summer with Bob while studying for the bar exam. Bob's apartment was in a great location on Springville Avenue, just off of Main Street near Bailey Avenue. Bob was a great roommate, He was very low-key and easygoing. I remember watching on TV with Bob the Challenger explosion and Jack Nicklaus winning the Masters for a sixth time. We went to Jim Kelly's first game as a Buffalo Bill and had a blast, although they lost. We watched the Iran-Contra hearings during breaks while studying for the bar exam. Bob and I were moot court partners in the fall of 1985 in the UB Law Desmond Moot Court Tournament. We made it to the quarterfinals before losing. We had the third best brief. I remember the party afterwards at the Three Coins Lounge on Niagara Falls Boulevard. We enjoyed ourselves that night. I remember that Bob was a very good writer and he preferred the brief writing over the oral advocacy. We both took a family law class in our second year. It was not a typical law school class. The focus was on future issues for family law. I recall studying the legal rights of the parties relating to in vitro fertilization and surrogate mothers. At the time, we really didn't like the class, but we trudged through it. I'm sure that Bob wasn't thinking he would end up practicing in the matrimonial law area. I actually first got to know Bob when he worked for our dad when he ran for Congress against Stan Lundeen back in 1980. Bob was a volunteer in our campaign office. I recall that Bob was more of an independent than a Republican at the time. He was very interested in politics and current events. Bob was a really good guy, and I'm glad that I knew him and had a number of interesting and fun experiences with him. He will surely be missed. I really appreciate that the Jamestown Bar Association has this custom of sending off its members with a memorial service. It is an impressive tradition. My best to you and your JBA colleagues. Sincerely, Peter H. Abdallah. And I'll add to that, Pete made reference to the summer I lived with Bob studying for the bar exam. I'd gone to law school down in Virginia and needed to come north to learn about New York law kind of for the first time. So it was a stressful situation preparing for the bar, but I remember that sort of the highlight of my week during my time up there was we would watch episodes of St. Elsewhere, which some of you may recall, which was kind of a fitting, surreal type of show to watch while you're studying for the bar exam. I didn't spend a lot of time, which I regret now in later years with Bob, but I very much valued that summer in his company studying for the bar. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Again, I'll look to the Zoom group. Anybody else would like to share a thought? If not, I will draw closure to our special meeting of the Jamestown Bar Association Memorial Committee with the recognition that we will have this transcribed and provided to the family members. And for that, we'll stand adjourned, knowing that Bob Schnizler did, in fact, love the law. We stand adjourned.